Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, I'm a good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's listener Q&A conversation. Dozens and dozens of questions that come in from week to week, and we like to take the ones that we feel are going to be the most actionable and have the biggest impact on your fasting journey. So that's the conversation we're going to do today. We're going to have a few questions that we've seen some repeat or similar conversations that we can have around and kind of group them together so you can leave today feeling encouraged, enlightened, and also ready to take some action with your fasting lifestyle. So Tommy, welcome into all of the new listeners. Thank you for giving us a chance and bringing us into your fasting journey or your fasting lifestyle. For you long-term listeners as well, we want to give you a shout out and thank you for continuing to follow us, continuing to listen in, and just continuing to take on this fasting lifestyle. And if you're new, go ahead, head back, listen to episode 1, hear a little bit more about why we do what we do, and that we're taking on the blood sugar, obesity, diabetes epidemic, one episode, one person, one fasting actionable item at a time. So excited to get into some of the stuff that you guys have relayed to us as sticking points or questions or clarity that you're needing just to get incredible fasting results, Tommy. So I know you had a shout out. We want to give some love back to you guys who show us the love in the 5-star review category. Those are our favorite kind. Those also give us or tell the podcast gods and goddesses that we are doing something of value and continuing to bring you episodes each and every week. So Tommy, you've got a shout out here you want to do first and foremost, right?
Yeah. Mr. Shortledge here says life-changing material, 5 stars. Since listening and learning from this incredible podcast back in January, I have lost 30 pounds. Congrats, sir. That is impressive.
Virtual high five, virtual set of applause. We don't have a soundboard, but you can hear it.
So good. I started listening to Dr. Scott and Tommy every day on the way to work in the morning since the new year. Can't imagine my commute to work any different now. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. I feel like, like we're having a conversation right now. So appreciate you, dropping the love here so we could go back and forth a little bit. I love how they break each podcast into segments, really good inspirational, motivational material in each episode. Thank you so much for the kind words. He says, keep up the good work. It's helped me so much. I can only imagine how many lives you've touched. So we are absolutely in it to win it. Keep doing what's working and keep up the great work, Mr. Shortledge. Appreciate it again.
That's awesome. I never go and look at those, or I should say I look at them I don't look at them enough. Yeah. Because that's really encouraging. Like that's just incredible. I absolutely love it. And we're grateful for all of the reviews, grateful for all of you listening. And we started this with the intention to help. And, those testimonials and those shout outs right there just mean so much to us. And hopefully we can deliver on another episode today they inspire as well. You're right. Because this whole lifestyle thing, right? This whole maintaining change, this whole habit pattern interrupt, this creating a life, a fulfilled life, a life that we deserve, a quality of life, without the fear of disease, off medications, not having blood sugar issues, and having energy every single day. For me personally, be, better in my role as a husband, as a dad, as a healthcare provider, right? So fasting has given us, or given me and you and so many of our listeners, just like Mr. Shortledge, the ability to turn the clock back, to get control, to exit the diet roller coaster, to get out of the, hey, you really got to lose weight, but let me go try again. And never get that sticking point or that consistency. So we want to speak to some of the things that y'all have asked about, which can be mental sticking points, physical sticking points, or things that can derail from continued successful progress. And I want to start off with a mindset conversation here. And this came from a post in our coaching group. and it said #decide. And it said, as of this morning, I'm at a 62% success rate at quotes, remembering the plan. So Tommy, folks that don't have our foundational fasting habit tracker, right? So we're not talking about tracking calories and tracking steps. We're talking about tracking daily habits that excite you and inspire you to reach your big result-based goal by daily actions that allow you to gain traction. One of them for Marvin is remembering the plan. So can you explain that? And then we'll go into kind of the mindset shift that we're going to encourage here.
Yeah, remembering the plan can be broken down like, what is my fasting plan for today? What decision did I make when I set my last timer, assuming that I did set my last timer, right? And then did I achieve my intended target of that fast that I set for myself? What was my plan, and did I achieve it, like on a day-to-day basis? Because if I'm looking at that as one of my metrics, that's an important part, because it can insulate me from going too far off track or getting too far away from my big goals, my big, hairy, audacious goals, if you will. Because if I'm remembering the short-term plan just from one day to the next, or maybe every 24 to 48 hours, if I'm relatively dialed in to remembering that, then that's going to make for big strides over time. So that's a big foundational thing that kind of small steps lead to big changes over time.
Yeah. So set your timer, stick to your timer. Intentionally break your fast with good, nutritious, intentionally chosen foods, right? Not overly restrictive, overly omittive. Putting these things into your plan that you know are sustainable, long-term pieces that you want takes repetition. So remembering the plan, in essence, is hitting some of the very finite basics of a fasting schedule. And one of the other questions that came in that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, there'll be kind of a theme today with like slippage or fasting fatigue or not sticking to the plan, which is why I wanted to start here with this mindset shift, right? So we talk a lot about, 100% plan, 100% perfect plan done 50% of the time is not as good as a 50% plan done 100% of the time.
Sure.
That consistency piece. So shout out to Marvin here, because we talk about 80%, right? So 30-day month, you got 6 days where you can be off the fasting, on off switch is off, right? Or your intentionality wanes, or a life event comes up and nips you in the bud, or, you got a couple nights of poor sleep because the kid was up with a nightmare in the middle of the night, or the boss's stress, or the car accident, or whatever it is, right?
It's almost like wiggle room, like forgiveness wiggle room.
Yeah.
I'm still on track, right? Even though it wasn't perfect.
That's a really great way to say it. Forgiveness wiggle room, because progress over perfection, especially when the scale is our driving metric or weight loss is our driving metric, it can get really frustrating, right? When the results don't match the amount of effort or your expectations in terms of time or reality. Yeah. So I love that forgiveness kind of piece, because progress over perfection. So this post was a very like, oh man, I'm kind of down about this, like 62%. And it's really cool to see the encouragement that came out of it. But he says, why do I feel so crappy about it? Like, I just gave my son some grief about getting 70% on a school project because I know he's capable of better. Isn't this the same? And kind of, relatively, not really. It depends on kind of where your mindset lies, right? I know it's kind of a wishy-washy, what the hell is he talking about kind of answer. We're going to unpack it here. But my first reaction was, well, you're 62% better than you were last month, where you were at 0%. And I've seen the wins, right? You've been crushing it. So why does this make you think about getting a poor grade on a project? Well, it's relative, right, Tom?
Yeah, it's like I'm looking at it like a D- or maybe an F, depending on what the scale is, right? And it's less than 80%, So if Marvin was sitting there with 80% as the target and he got, 62, then it's like, okay, I didn't hit the mark, But at the same time, it's all relative, because if you look back, what did last month look like? What did the month before that look like? And what were your results over this month when you did hit 62%? Because word to the wise, Marvin's been crushing it over the last month, okay? So yes, agreed, if you hit 80%, this last month, maybe the results would have been a bit better.
Slightly better.
And that's awesome. But I mean, I think as far as like squeezing the juice out of the lemon, I think you got most of the juice out of it given the results that I've seen over the last 30 days. So that's incredible. So it almost feels like a little bit arbitrary to give yourself lashings right now, for
Right.
not hitting the preconceived mark from before.
So the
Like, does that make
delta,
sense?
right? So if you went from 0 to 62% in 1 month, huge. 62 to 80 is like skipping a stone across the lake. Like
Yeah.
you just did, I don't know what analogy I'm trying to go here, but like you've done most of the work.
Yeah.
So now you just have to refine it. So where were those things? Where were those slippage points, right? Because yes, of course we want to do better. And I know you had a relative analogy about the grades too, right, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like if you're thinking of your kids are in school, a lot of times we're worried about the long term ramifications. Like, well, if you're not getting an A, right now, then maybe you're not going to get into the best school. You're not going to be able to have the career choice that you're looking forward to and things like that. But if 62% had been the mark, or 70% had been the mark, and maybe that got you into, I don't know, it got you into like Brown University, but not Stanford, or it got you into MIT, but not Johns Hopkins, or, like whatever, then it's all relative at that point. It doesn't mean that you took away nothing from it, right? Or that you would be better off with a negative mindset coming out of that experience. So I absolutely don't like reframing a win to like justify when my behaviors didn't kind of match. But I have a feeling that if Marvin reflected back 60 days ago, that he would find big improvements over the last 30 from the 30 before that. And I
Right.
think that's the key takeaway from this. And that's going to propel him over the next 30 rather than like, shouldn't I be frustrated right now? What do you think?
Right. So I loved that you had mentioned if you start a new language 2 months ago, what would you expect your literacy point to be now?
Yeah. Yeah.
My
From
wife's
zero.
been doing Babbel from 0, right?
Yeah.
She's so for Spanish, right? And my daughter is fluent in Spanish from going to Spanish schoolhouse for a few years during daycare up until kindergarten.
So cool.
And she can still speak and communicate, and she just picked it up. She's like a little sponge. So she was talking to one of her old teachers the other day when we saw them out in the community. And we got home, and the other night my wife and I were just talking, and she was like, I could actually understand what they were saying. And I'm like, that's great.
Nice.
And she's hit like, I don't know, a 68-day streak on, it might be Duolingo, not Babbel, whatever it is, whatever the fancy schmancy app is. But she's been really consistent. So now she can understand it, but she still can't speak it, right? So Marvin, 0 to 62, man, huge improvement. 62 to 80, small, like you got this. Those are small potatoes, like not a problem. But now that you're 62% better at this one foundational proficiency, you can start adding in a different proficiency. So we focus on the positive. You've got a small leap to the 80%. Now, what else can you add in now that you're making this a foundational habit? So the encouragement here is that in the dieting mindset, like we expect the result to match the effort or the intention. And then we just kind of lose our way in terms of, the comparison trap, or the relative comparison trap, we should say. So I want to encourage you, if you're relating to this in any way, albeit the scale or drinking water before coffee or whatever habit you're trying to install into your fasting lifestyle, make sure we focus on what we've achieved, and then small tweaks to the process is what we want to take away from it, not giving ourselves lashings and falling into that despair trap.
Right. Build on what's working. Do more of the things that you're doing well, rather than, spending all of your time focus on what I should be doing better. Right.
Right.
And that's such a huge, like, inverted, mind shift, but it's so different from a lot of the diet culture too, especially if you've dieted a lot, over time.
For sure. Okay. Second question that came in was around the concept of fasting fatigue. You can call this diet fatigue, lifestyle fatigue, fasting fatigue. And it's something that we hear from time to time when, again, the results are not matching the expectation. And the slips, the concept here that we want to unpack is really that the slippage points, we want to catch them early before they become landslides, right? So you've been on track. You're doing, I'm going to summarize. This was more of like a post / hey, I'm looking for some guidance. It wasn't really like a direct question, but there is an inherent slippage point conversation in here that we think can be really useful. regardless if you're a beginner, advanced, or if you've reached your goal and now you're trying to maintain those changes or the weight loss, right, through the tried and true art of fasting and a fasting lifestyle, which is still pretty counterculture, getting a little bit more acceptance. But when you tell someone you fast, they sometimes will look at you like you're a little crazy. And this is after maybe even complimenting you that you look great because you've lost some weight. Right. So there's definitely a little dissonance there, but it's right. It's the best. Wait, no, I don't want to do that. But you just asked me what I was doing. So anyway, so this person's been doing a fasting schedule, and there've been some shifts and some ahas and some mental shifts that have taken place, but the progress isn't matching the expectation. So the wheels have come off, the slippage point has happened, and the positive thing here is there's some things that we can do to catch this sooner. And I've used this story in the past. There's a husband and a wife. They came in, they crushed it, 100 plus pounds lost between the two of them. Yeah. But then 6 months goes by and didn't hear from them for a while. And they came back and said, hey, we've given back about 40 pounds of that 100. And I said, great. And they're like, what? I'm like, I'm glad you caught it at 40 and not 110. Because that's the dieting, the weight loss cycle, is that the research shows too that you lose the weight and only 5% of the people can keep it off, right? And maintain those changes. And then within, 2 to 3 years, you give it back plus some.
Yeah.
So the good news is here with this question of how do we fight the fasting fatigue? How do we fight the slippage points before they turn into landslides? And then how do we get back on track? Well, the good news is you've identified it hopefully quicker or sooner, or had the awareness before we ended up, farther down the give it back line, so to speak.
Yeah, because it can be like a frog in boiling water, where it just, we start to slip a little bit more slippage over here, and it comes out like in different spots where it's like it could be food choices, not setting my fasting timer, not feeling like I really have a plan, or kind of just trying to freelance it, or just try to wing it, throughout the week. And so the faster we can kind of realize when we've gotten away from what was working and what got us some success in the past, then to your point, like that's where the magic can happen, because it's so much easier to get back on track when you don't have all of the way to kind of go again. Like if you've seen the scale tick up a little bit, that kind of thing. So how do we kind of identify those points? Well, I think like physical markers like in your environment can be helpful. Like I really like dedicating the home screen on my phone to certain things. And one of them is my fasting timer. Like I still use Fast Habit, like 4 years in, and I won't move it from my home screen. But if I ever caught myself like pushing it aside because I wasn't using it, then that would be a pretty obvious sign that I'm like getting away from the foundational habits. Things like keeping my water near my coffee, and other things like that, like actually in my house, or making a plan for myself, like put it in the calendar to where I kind of go through what is my weekly plan right now, so I can feel it if it starts to kind of slip away. Does that make sense?
It does. And some of the things that we most commonly see in regards to those slippage points that you're alluding to, first of all, we want to, again, catch them as soon as we can. And that awareness is so key, especially in the health and dieting world, weight loss world, exiting the weight loss world into a fasting lifestyle world. Those old habits die hard. But where those slippage points come up is typically in like poor planning and the forgetting of the plan, right? So you plan out your whole week and then something happens and you fall off track, or relying on willpower, right? So being too restrictive or too omissive or too damned to not eat or sniff a carbohydrate, or, you forget to prioritize protein, or you're on a health kick and you're eating like a rabbit, right? You're too restrictive.
Eliminated everything.
Yeah. Right? Or you just eliminated all life and fun, all
There's
fun
gonna be a
of,
rebound effect
of the plan, right? Yeah. So one of the things in those moments is to really slow down and take inventory, right?
Zooming in, right? Zooming in. So if you were to take inventory and zoom in on what you're doing, then what that would mean would be like, instead of looking at the whole month or the whole goal, right? Like if it's 50 pounds or even if it's 20 pounds, break it down into a more digestible chunk of that. So maybe you're looking at the next 5 pounds, or heck,
next 48 hours
pounds, right? Yeah. Go to the next 48 hours, even the next 24, like make one decision right now, because it ultimately comes down to the action, not the overarching 100% perfect plan, right? Because that's the perfect plan done 50% of the time is going to get me far less results than the half done plan 100% of the time, the one that I can do consistently over time. So zooming in, I love that point.
And slowing down and zooming in. So don't always think the next long fast is going to be the solution. The solution a lot of times is what you were just talking about, is making our weekly plan and then forgetting the plan. Then that's not the plan, right? Or our focus isn't in the right place. We're not aiming at the right target. So if you forget the plan weekly, then how the heck can you do the monthly plan? How the heck can you do the yearly 50, 80, 100 pound plan? How can you do the diabetes reversal plan? Well, that overwhelm, that gap between the big end goal and where you're at, especially in a moment of fasting fatigue or slippage, is really disheartening, right? So the way to get back on track, slow down, take inventory. And you said this to me right before, we hopped on as we were kind of prepping for this conversation. You said, act like you're not slipping. So what are the things that you were doing that were working before the slippage? You had the awareness, you had the aha, you caught it before you slid into a landslide, right? We keep using these analogies for this conversation. So to get back on track, what are those, zoom in, and what are those things that you can commit to that with 100% certainty you can achieve?
Yeah.
Not the next 72-hour fast as reparations for, being part of an avalanche or landslide over the last couple of days, but act like I love the way you said that, act like you are not slipping. And what can you commit to that you can achieve?
Yeah, because there were small things that you were doing, like just a week ago or a month ago, whenever it was that you weren't slipping. There were little things. If you had followed yourself around and kind of observed yourself, you were doing little things. So you don't have to feel like a winner today, right? Like not every day is gonna be a 10. So I don't have to feel like I'm crushing it today in order to do a couple of small things that I know are going to serve me. So it's like doing them even though, or doing them like despite the fact that I don't feel like doing them, but they're small, they're digestible, and I can do them. I can physically do them. And once I do them, then I will naturally be more inclined to do more of those things because those small things are going to start to move the needle. If I'm a little bit more disciplined with my sleep and my hydration, guess what? My cravings naturally come down a bit. So the next time I find myself breaking a fast or at a nutrition opportunity, I'm going to subconsciously more easily make some slightly better food decisions at that point. It's going to make my next fast that much easier. It's amazing how the momentum builds like that. And so sometimes it just starts with one or two small actions of acting as if, not trying to convince myself that I'm perfect, but just acting as if anyway.
Right. And sometimes it actually comes down to a shift in targets. So if you're relying on the scale, or if you're relying on, how you feel, right? You're relying on your feelings rather than having some like hard data, right? So we talk a lot about non-scale victories, right? So clothes fitting different, rings fitting different, more energy,
mental
less
ahas.
Yeah, mental ahas, euphoria, less brain fog, handling the stress and the kids and the traffic and all the stuff better, right? Your mood changes. So we need to find those things to focus on. We need to find those diamonds in a rough because they're there. Our brain just typically goes to scale, not progress, not making progress. So sometimes there's also an opportunity to level up your metrics. And that brings me to kind of our realization recently, Tommy, with our re-engagement with NutriSense. And I want to talk about NutriSense for a couple of minutes because it's been pretty eye-opening for me recently going through some injuries and rehab and those types of things. Where I've noticed some big changes in how my body's been responding to the way I was doing things prior to recommitting to my NutriSense program. So first and foremost, NutriSense is a cutting edge technology. It's a continuous glucose monitor, or AKA CGM. And it is an incredible combination of the biosensor itself, which is the thing that you wear on the back of your tricep. It's completely painless. People are afraid, oh, there's a needle. You don't feel it. You literally don't feel it at all. I don't know how it makes any sense, but it doesn't hurt. And it's a combination of that cutting edge technology, but also human expertise. So you get an incredible app, you get dietary support, You get a community that is all looking at these metrics in a way to better their health and wellness and outcomes. So you get to see in real time how your body responds to different foods, exercise, stress, sleep, some of those things that you were just talking about that make the journey easier because you inherently make better food decisions when you're not tired, stressed, and your cortisol is not through the roof. Well, knowing where your blood sugar is by using the CGM and having it on, it gives you real-time data on what your glucose levels are doing. And then you've got your app and the graphs, and the visualization there is so powerful because you get to see in real time where the places for improvement are, right? So some of the benefits and outcomes that we see is more consistent weight loss, getting back on track, which speaks to the question that we were just discussing. Better stable energy throughout the day, better sleep, not reactions in terms of, allergies or those types of things, but in how your body feels when you eat certain things, cravings, etc. And I know rehabbing my shoulder recently and spending more time creating inflammation by going through these incredibly painful, time-consuming rehab exercises, I've noticed that my body is craving more nutrients. And if I'm not careful, I'm just going to go into full-out eating mode, right? But I know that if I go to the sourdough that's always on my counter, because my wife's recently become a baker of homemade gluten-free sourdough, that is going to drastically elevate my insulin over the next 6 to 8 hours, where I want decreased inflammation, promoting healing, more consistent blood sugars. So NutriSense has really given me the opportunity to be my own self-advocate. So I know you've recommitted as well, but I want to encourage y'all. We've partnered with them officially. Head to the show notes to click the link. You're going to get a code, and that's going to allow you to get $30 off and get 1 month free of dietitian support. I'm going to encourage y'all to do what I did and choose one of the 3, 6, or 12-month subscriptions and really commit to it, because not committing to it isn't going to allow you to make those lifestyle changes that we want for you. That sustainable time takes change. And I'm telling you, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been tracking my blood sugar for a long time. And just recently with this injury, the NutriSense has been incredibly powerful in making sure that I'm giving my body the best opportunity to heal and function at 100%. So head to nutrisense.io/fasting for life. That is the site. The $30 off and 1 month free of dietitian support. So, Tommy,
Love it.
I want to go over a couple more things here, a couple more questions that have been submitted. And my notes froze because technology is great. So, fasting lifestyle. I want to go over the fasting lifestyle. And this is obviously Fasting for Life is the name of the podcast, but the fasting lifestyle. This question came in, and I'm going to group this question in the category of life. I'm going to group it in life.
Okay.
I'm going to call it the life strategy, where you've got so many things going on, so many yeses being said to so many external situations that we need to have a conversation around being able to prioritize and put in the non-negotiables. So the non-negotiables, meaning what are the things that are upcoming in your life that you are going to say yes to because they're that important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then I also feel like that could be parsed out to, yes, I'm going to participate, but it doesn't always mean, yes, I'm going to be eating, or I'm going to be eating when everyone else there is. So I don't necessarily have to say no to the situation in order to say no to the offer of the food that's at the banquet or the dinner or the social function or whatever it might be. Maybe it's not that important for me to be eating at that point, and maybe it doesn't fit into my long-term goals of my fasting plan. So if you find yourself identifying as like having a very busy social calendar, or a social butterfly, or a people pleaser, or a just, like influencing, connecting, just a social person, then this can be something where if we're not flexing our no muscle or our no thank you muscle enough, we can find ourselves participating in ways that don't really serve our long-term goals. Like I don't want to feel like I'm painted into a corner because I'm at a social event and I feel very uncomfortable telling people that I'm fasting, or no thank you, I'm not going to be eating right now. But at the same time, I don't want to go home and then feel frustrated or guilty or shameful that I broke my plan, and and then knowing exactly why tomorrow, like the scale ticked up, even though my goals are important to me, right?
Yeah, so the parameters of the question came in around family coming back from a trip, bringing all of the old school stuff that grandma and grandpa used to
Mhm.
bring us, right?
Yeah,
All the childhood
the
bests,
childhood stuff.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so if I was going to go back, I would go back to the slushies from the Little General around the corner, the candy cigarettes, the ring pops, all of that kind of stuff, right? Cuz that
yeah.
was I'd get on my bike. I'm 12, 14, 15 years old. That's where I'd go spend my allowance. I'd go get the goodies, get all hopped up on sugar, come home, eat dinner, and crash. Right.
Did you
So
have like a saltwater taffy though? Like where you grew
yeah,
up?
that was
You have
down
something
by
like
the
that?
that was down by the beaches in Rhode Island. But
Okay,
so you could
okay.
get it inland, but that's like getting seafood in, yeah, I don't know, the middle continental United
Yeah,
States, right? Like
right. Just don't
that
do
ain't
it.
fresh. Okay. Just go to the
Yeah.
coast, get the lobster. Yeah. Go get it off the dock. Right. So
Yep.
yes, you could get it, but it wasn't the same. So but that would be a regional thing, right?
Yeah.
So
Something you grew up with.
yeah, and then maybe you have a family trip coming up. So there's a concert involved, a special weekend where you're going to travel to a concert that is like a bucket list item. And in
Yeah.
there you've got two restaurants that you've gone to that are staples of your trip, right? You fly in,
Yeah.
you do the thing, you're going to these places, you've already got the reservations. But then you've got the stuff at home. You've got the football barbecue. You've got the Suns banquet. You've got the swim meet. You've got the neighborhood food truck Friday. All of this
Business lunch on
stuff.
Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got all these different moving parts. And the reality is we want to talk sustainability. So we like to say, what are your non-negotiables? What are your non-negotiables each week? So for me, it's a date night. Every week, it's a
Mhm.
date night. That's a non-negotiable. I'm not going to go to dinner with my wife and not eat.
Yeah.
Okay. Just not going to do it. It's just weird.
Yeah.
Okay. Not saying I haven't done it, but it's not something I'm going to do consistently. Right. So
Yeah.
the reality is non negotiables. So, what are those things that matter to you? For me, I would prioritize the trip and the experience, and I would just shrink the windows. Right. And
Yeah.
let's say when I was growing up, my house was always the house where all the neighborhood kids came to. And it
Yeah.
was a revolving snack door, right? The pantry. I just had a conversation with my friend the other day. He's like, my addiction to Pop-Tarts came from your pantry.
Oh man.
And I was like, oh my
Sorry.
gosh, I forgot about that, right? Like
Yeah.
crazy, some of that stuff that comes with us, right? So revolving door, there's always people there. There's always opportunity. But that didn't mean that like every time I came home and one of my friends was sitting on my porch eating the Pop-Tarts, that I was going to go in and grab the Pop-Tarts, or I was going to go in and, have a second dinner, right? If I had already eaten, right? Like, so the external plans can change, but that doesn't mean that your plans have to change.
Mm.
So what are your non-negotiables? What are your boundaries? What does sustainability look like for you if you're one of these busy, on the go, always have an opportunity to go off track or go off plan or say yes to something that's not serving your long-term goal?
Yeah, that's a great point, because as those opportunities come in, a lot of times it's away from home. So it's not like I'm controlling what the food choices are too. So there may not only be like more eating opportunities, but those nutrition opportunities themselves might be higher, like a higher calorie load or a higher insulin load. Like especially if I'm trying to lose body fat, these things are going to be, I'm going to have to be careful about my insulin load,
Right.
And if I'm unsure of how to say no to some of these things, or if I'm not clear for myself, like what my priorities are, that's going to be tough, because I'm going to find myself a week from now, maybe worse off than I am right now, frustrated that I'm not closer to my longer term goals. So practically in the moment, what I find works well is having like a default, because this is one of the reasons why we started with one meal a day, like a simple way to build in some
to get
good,
some traction,
consistent fasting.
Yeah.
And also not have to say no to everything.
Right.
Because it's rare that there's going to be a day where I'm going to have multiple things that I really feel like I can't say, like I don't want to like sit out of. Yeah.
Right.
Say no
Right.
to. I mean, you may have like a Christmas or a Thanksgiving or something else like that. Even along those times, I might exercise like a 2 or a 3, maybe a 4-hour window on like a multiple opportunity holiday like that. But I'm probably not going outside of that, because I'm just not going to feel great And so I'm going to have to find something that I'm like, nah, no, thank you. I'm eating later, or I already ate, or I'm just not feeling 100%. I'm good. But, I'm participating in the event or in the connection, but I'm just not taking in more food because it's not going to serve me. I know that already. I've already learned that lesson.
It's hard to do in the moment.
True.
So that's where intention, if you've noticed the theme today, right, is the intention, a little bit of planning, and the awareness of the situation, right? My wife and I talk a lot about the pace, right? The pace that we're at.
Yeah.
We just went through a season of pace that, we thought we were out of, that hasn't ended yet. And the pace has been very pacey. It's been very fast and lots of curveballs and lots of things shifting on the fly.
Yeah.
So stepping back and regaining control is simply putting a few minutes of planning and intention into your fasting schedule, into your week, into your non-negotiables. Because controlling what you can control only reinforces the fact that you're voting yes when you stick to the plan, right?
Yeah.
But if you're constantly flailing around, I like to use the analogy of plastic bag like floating around in the breeze, right? It's just like 1 minute it goes this way, the next minute it goes this way. Or like you see the plastic on the highway and you're driving down the highway and this thing's like,
you just don't know where
it's like, no,
going.
don't hit it. Don't hit it. Oh, okay, I missed it. Oh, it's veer right, right? And it's just like whipping around because of all the drafts and the wind, right? We want just to regain that consistency, a little bit of planning, a little bit of intention, non-negotiables, and the awareness that, sustainability comes from the practice of this, getting the repetitions in and seeing what's going to be and what works for you long-term and what doesn't. And that's why the personalization and customization of weight loss is something that we feel is missing in the dieting culture. It's something that, the done for you plans, the done to you medications or surgeries, the recipe guides, the workout plans, right? Like if you don't love running, don't go try to lose weight by picking up a new pair of running shoes, right? Like go do something you love to do is my point. So a little bit of intention goes a long way. The last question we want to go over today is a question that we get often about why do I feel cold, right? So beginning of the conversation today was things that might derail you, how to get back on track, physical, mental ahas, but cold can be one of those things where, man, every time I fast, I get really cold and I just don't want to do that. And there's also the concern about, well, is it my metabolism? Is it my thyroid? So we just want to unpack this in a couple of minutes here for you. First things first, there are 4 main contributors to why you feel cold when fasting. So when you start intermittent fasting, your body is going to start the process of becoming fat adapted. When you fast, your liver is going to convert stored fat into energy, since there is no energy generated from food. And that metabolic shift is called fat adaptation. And during that process, your body system uses the fat tissue blood flow. So the energy meant to keep your body warm, the adipose, the blood flow that goes to the adipose tissue, it uses that for the conversion of the white fat, the fat around your hips, belly, and vital organs, that visceral adiposity. It uses that blood flow to turn it to energy, which then causes your body temperature to drop. It's robbing that blood flow, right? To produce this fat burning effect, which is a positive. Yeah. So some factors, huge, right? But it's uncomfortable. So some factors that influence the duration may include age, menopause, carb consumption, slow metabolic rate, etc. Now, luckily, fasting boosts that growth hormone and that metabolism in the first, 0 to 48 to 72 hours. So we're going to get that benefit. The second is a lack of heat from digestion. So your body just isn't digesting the food, which is the thermal effect of food category in your, body's ability to burn calories throughout the day. You just no longer have the thermic effect from that food. So when you do eat, one thing you can do to counteract this is make sure that you're prioritizing protein, because protein has the highest thermal effect afterburn, so to speak. Prioritizing protein, really good. Number 3 is the redirection of blood flow. So when you are fasting, your blood flow turns to your brown adipose tissue, and that unique fat, that brown adipose fat, breaks down glucose and stored fat to regulate your body temperature. So that's a good thing, right? But temporarily, you'll feel cold as that blood flow that normally keeps your hands and feet warm is redirected to that brown adipose tissue. So it's something that will happen, but it's not lasting. So you'll start to warm back up as your body becomes more fat adapted, which is related to that first point. And then the fourth thing is the nutrient deficiencies. So if you're fasting, you're not getting as many nutrients in. So that's why we really want to make sure that we are supplementing with trace minerals, Himalayan salts, Redmond sea salts, trace mineral supplements, multivitamins as well, to make sure that we are going to be replacing the nutrients that are lost, the fat soluble nutrients that are lost when you're fat burning, and the water soluble nutrients and vitamins that are lost when you fast, because your body is going to start excreting more water, especially when you cut down on your carbohydrates. So making sure that you are getting nutrient dense food choices, right? Natural foods, non-refined, non-processed stuff. And then making sure that you're supplementing, getting in your salt, your trace minerals. And that's also going to support your thyroid function. Specifically for thyroid, you can look at things like iodine, selenium, and zinc to make sure, for instance, Brazil nuts, right? Brazil nuts, just 2 a day is your entire daily allowance of selenium. That can also support your thyroid function. So when it comes to cold, your body is doing what it should be doing. It's just doing it differently than what you're used to. And you will warm up. I promise you. I know for me personally, we used to keep the air at 72 during the day and then 67 at night. And if it went to 73, I'd feel uncomfortable. Now it's 75, 76 during the day and 70, 71 at night. Because I'm smaller. I don't have as much fat anymore, right? So I am a little bit colder, but it will get better, I promise you.
Not as much physical insulation on your body, right?
Right.
So it also brings me back to the fact that when I first started fasting, I was definitely looking at like, okay, what is my next eating opportunity? Because there are some things I feel like I've said no to, some of my old favorites, some cravings were there. And so I would definitely, and we hear that question too a lot, which is, if I'm fasting, do I really have to worry about what I'm eating? And I would say, absolutely.
In the beginning, probably not.
It's not a requirement. It's not a requirement to get everything right all at once, or to change everything, right? In order to have success or to find some enjoyment and some realization that this could really be a good solution for me. So at the same time, if I'm taking a look at this, like I have a lot fewer nutrition opportunities now, let me make it count. Let me get in some really good, high quality foods when I am eating, because I'm not going to be eating as often. That just makes a lot of intuitive sense to me. I'm not saying that I did it immediately when I started, for sure, but I think that is like a key part of the mindset that like really that kind of sets a stage for some of the more intuitive things and for long-term adaptability and sustainability of a fasting lifestyle.
A couple other things just to hit here in terms of cold. Obviously, things like iron deficiency can cause low blood circulation, but that's going to be required, by a blood test. Low B vitamins, and especially B1 for something like Raynaud's syndrome, right? So you want to make sure that you're getting nutrient-dense foods, or at least maybe supplementing with B vitamins if you're not noticing that your fat adaptation is taking place, or maybe you have a lot of weight to lose, so you're going to be cold for a little while you go through this process. You can also look at things like chromium. That deficiency can contribute to insulin resistance as well, which will take you longer to become fat adapted. So there's a few other considerations here. Obviously, speak to your healthcare provider if you've got some like serious cold concerns, but being cold and going through the process is quite normal, especially when you start to like stack your fasts on top of one another and really start to see some traction and some weight loss. So just want to encourage y'all that your body's doing what it should be doing. We just want to lessen, the speed bumps along the way. So Tommy, as we wrap up today's episode, just great questions, great submissions. Hopefully the conversations are going to move you forward in your fasting journey. If you want more guidance on the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, we created a brand new resource this year that came out in January, and the response has been great. It gives you some of the tactical, some of the big picture, some of the encouragement, some of our kind of lexicon that's been growing over the last few years now with adapting this fasting lifestyle and helping hundreds and hundreds of other folks just like us, just like you, to get results. So head to the show notes. Blueprint link is there. Download it. It'll bring you to a website. We'll zip it to your email inbox, and we'll make sure you get that resource that we feel is pretty damn incredible. So hopefully that will solidify you being able to take some action today, which is our promise to you each and every episode, that we're going to allow you to have something you can take away from today's conversation to add into your fasting lifestyle. So Tommy, as always, sir, appreciate the conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.